The source that I have is impeccable, and he said that not only were the cameras smashed, plural cameras smashed, so that the suspect likely knew about the locations of them.
Clearly knew exactly where those devices were hidden. He also said the car belonging to Savannah Guthrie's sister, Annie Guthrie, got towed, impounded, and swept for evidence. And here is the exact wording he used. Pay close attention to this phrasing, because it matters. He said, "They now believe the son-in-law may be the prime suspect." Those were his exact words. The son-in-law may be the prime suspect. It was 9:48 p.m. on January 31st, 2026, in Catalina Foothills, Tucson, Arizona. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie just got home from a totally normal dinner outing. She spent the evening with family, sharing laughs and a familiar routine, the kind of night that never feels important until later. Her daughter, Annie Guthrie, and son-in-law dropped her off, pulling into the driveway while the garage opened. Nancy stepped inside, and within 2 minutes, their car left. That tiny window between 9:48 and 9:50 p.m. became the very last confirmed moment anyone saw her alive inside her house. What happened next was completely, eerily still. No panicked phone calls, zero text messages, no security alarms going off in the dark. Just dead silence inside a quiet home in a perfectly peaceful neighborhood. Nothing looked out of place, until absolutely everything was. In true crime cases like this, people usually fixate on the drama, the disappearance itself, the suspected abduction, the total chaos afterward, but detectives locked onto something way more revealing, the very last normal second. And in Nancy's timeline, that exact moment is chillingly precise. Everything that happened after 9:50 p.m. is now the core of this missing person investigation. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's front door Google Nest camera suddenly dropped offline. Police do not think this was some random glitch or a dropped Wi-Fi signal. Their theory is way darker. Someone physically disabled that device. That one calculated move completely flipped the tone of the investigation. It screamed careful planning, not blind impulse. Inside knowledge, not dumb luck. Whoever walked up to Nancy Guthrie's house that night definitely knew about the camera before setting foot on her lawn, then hit another crucial turning point. Roughly 25 minutes after the camera went dark, the system logged a motion event at 2:12 a.m. No clear video, just a digital ping proving something was moving outside. 16 minutes later, at exactly 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker lost connection with its monitoring system. From that second forward, she vanished. Those three timestamps, 1:47, 2:12, and 2:28 a.m., they now define the entire mystery. It is a 41-minute window that detectives swear holds the real truth about her kidnapping. What really strikes police is the sheer control. This was not some frantic amateur stumbling around in the dark. The suspect, who showed up around 2 o'clock in the morning, killed the camera, hung around the property for a long time, and moved with cold confidence. They weren't just making it up. Detectives believe this was totally calculated from step one. Even crazier, it looks like it was pulled off by someone fully convinced they would get away with it. That gut feeling only grew when police recovered shredded pieces of doorbell video. Video clips the suspect probably thought were deleted forever. Tech analysts did not just watch what the prowler did. They broke down exactly how they moved, and the absolute calmness was deeply disturbing. The suspect walked up to the house slowly, completely locked in. No obvious fear, no second-guessing, no nervous looks over the shoulder. Criminal profilers say that is a huge red flag. Trespassers usually act jumpy. They hesitate. They move too fast. They keep checking behind them. This person did none of that. Instead, the suspect walked around like they practically owned the place. That single detail pushed one major theory straight to the front of this case. Former federal profilers have pointed out that the shadowy figure at Nancy's front door might not be a total stranger. If they're right about that, even a little bit, it flips everything. An intruder doesn't just stroll up to a front door at 2 a.m. expecting a warm welcome. A random creep doesn't hang around with that much swagger. But someone who actually knew the house, or even knew Nancy personally, totally would. If she cracked the door because she recognized the person outside, maybe their voice, their stance, a familiar habit, then that split second is where everything went wrong. Police are actively exploring the real chance that Nancy knew exactly who was on her porch. If she did, the intruder's cover was blown instantly, and that is likely when the whole kidnapping plan started falling apart. Once she knew them, control started slipping entirely. That idea matches another massive clue: blood found right on the porch, not hidden deep inside the living room. It was left right on the threshold, trapped between the front door and the dark outside world. To detectives, that spot means everything. It shows things got violent fast, right when the door opened. So the big question isn't just about who drove up to the property. It is why that specific person felt so incredibly comfortable standing there. That thought gets even scarier when you rewind past January 31st. Police are now seriously looking at two earlier dates, January 11th and January 24th, two entirely different weekends that also involved highly suspicious surveillance. Line up those dates with the night Nancy vanished, and investigators say a chilling pattern starts to emerge. Not random prowling, but repeated visits. Not coincidence, but calculated prep. Behind the scenes, that one detail has totally flipped how detectives view this missing person case. If someone stalked Nancy's house in the weeks before she vanished, then February 1st wasn't the start of this crime story. It was the brutal execution of a plan already in motion. Which means the suspect probably didn't just stumble onto the property that night. They already knew the layout, the daily routine, and most importantly when Nancy would be completely alone. Another massive piece of this investigation centers on a blue Honda CR-V, the car that brought Nancy home that evening. At first glance, just the family SUV driven by her son-in-law, it was last seen pulling out of the driveway around 9:50 p.m. But detectives treated it as way more than a simple ride. They seized it, locked it down, and tore it apart looking for clues. Weeks passed, and they still hadn't given it back. A massive red flag showing exactly how highly authorities valued this vehicle. Modern cars aren't just for driving, they're rolling computers. They track exactly where they traveled, every single stop, how long they idled in place. When the engine died, which doors opened, even what phones paired to Bluetooth, investigators weren't just hunting for visible things like stray fibers or fingerprints. They were hunting down a digital timeline, hard facts that memory or emotion couldn't possibly twist. If that CR-V moved again between 9:50 p.m. and 2:28 a.m., the tech would spill. If it came back to Nancy's block, they'd know. If it never came back, they'd know that, too. Which gives us two wildly different reasons why police kept that car locked up. Theory 1. It held something incredibly incriminating. The other, quieter option? It actually helped clear the people who were closest to Nancy. In pretty much every homicide or missing persons case, the last verified person to see the victim alive gets grilled first. It doesn't mean guilt, just standard procedure. In Nancy's disappearance, that last confirmed moment involved her son-in-law and the CR-V, but 16 days into the search, police publicly announced the family's son-in-law included had been totally cleared. Cops don't make that kind of statement lightly. You don't get cleared in a massive investigation by guesswork. You get cleared by hard evidence. If the SUV's computer proved it left Nancy's house at 9:50 p.m. and never came back, that isn't just an opinion. It's pure fact. And if that fact exists, the car isn't pointing detectives toward the family at all. It slams one door shut and forces all eyes right back to the property, back to the stranger who showed up at 1:47 a.m. Because of that, the CR-V might be just as crucial for proving where someone wasn't, as where they actually were. That pivot tightens the investigation dramatically. Once the car is cleared from the timeline, the focus zeroes in on the house, the porch, and that mystery figure caught on the salvaged footage, which brings up another haunting question: why that specific night? A random crime could have gone down literally any time, but it happened on an evening when Nancy had just gotten home from a family outing. A night with documented movement around the property. A night where the timeline naturally pointed the finger at other people who had just been there. Detectives think that is no coincidence. In fact, the attacker might have picked that exact timing simply because it made things confusing. A night with house guests, a recent drop-off, a highly visible family car. All of that creates background noise early in an investigation. And noise buys time. If you wanted to keep the cops looking the wrong way, picking a night with lots of existing foot traffic is a genius move. Authorities are super careful not to throw wild accusations around without proof, but structurally, it absolutely matters. Confusion ruins focus, and in those crucial first 48 hours, ruined focus is everything. But the craziest twist actually came from the tech itself. The creep who ripped down that doorbell camera probably thought they were wiping the record clean forever. On paper, it made sense. The family had no live access to the video, no obvious cloud backup to download, and the camera itself was physically gone. But massive digital security networks don't always work the way criminals think. Trashed or hidden files aren't always permanently gone in an instant. Sometimes it hides deep in the system until it gets overwritten. And here, cyber teams managed to pull the video from the grave 10 days later. That digital revival might just be the single biggest mistake the suspect ever made. Because the footage didn't just place someone at the scene, it captured their vibe. The intruder walked up calmly, taking a dead straight line to the front door. At first, grabbing the camera looked totally precise, cold and intentional. A gloved hand reached up toward the lens, but then something snapped. They suddenly started improvising, grabbing a nearby potted plant and using it to blind the camera. For detectives, that tiny detail is a goldmine. It shows the crime was plotted out, but not exactly ready for the real world. If the attacker came totally prepared, they would have brought the right gear, duct tape, spray paint, or something meant for the job. Instead, they improvised on the spot. That matters, because winging it under pressure screams amateur. It tells us they ran through the scenario in their head, but never actually did it. Even crazier? They did not smash the security camera or destroy the footage entirely. They just covered it. That is a softer, temporary fix, the move of a guy who thought things would stay quiet and end perfectly. There was another huge clue in that recovered surveillance video that caught detectives' eyes. The intruder kept his head tilted down while walking up the steps, clearly trying to hide his face from the doorbell lens. That is no accident. It points to someone who knows how home security systems work. Someone who gets that just a profile can blow their cover. But despite all that caution, one little slip-up made it on tape, a mustache peeking out under the mask. In a mystery where everything else is concealed, a tiny clue like that becomes absolute dynamite. That is because true crime investigations today do not rely on one magical smoking gun. They are built like webs. The video feeds the timeline tracks the movement. Movement links straight to digital footprints. And digital footprints reveal identity. Even without a perfect mugshot, every little piece sharpens the criminal profile. The more those dots connect, the smaller the suspect pool gets. Forensic experts keep coming back to one wild thing in the tape: the total lack of fear. The guy is not just calm, he is arrogant. Even hardcore criminals usually show nerves somehow: a quick twitch, a fast look around, or weird little shifts in their stance. This guy looked dead set on walking away like a ghost. And that swagger usually comes from inside knowledge. Knowing the layout, the schedules, the block, maybe even the victim inside. At the end of the day, it all comes back to the front door. No matter how perfect the scheme was, nothing happens unless Nancy actually opens that door. And once she did, whatever went down was either meant to stay quiet, or it went horribly off script in seconds. Looking at the blood spatter and the timeline, police are pretty sure things went totally sideways. Publicly, it looks like a cold case. Off the record? The task force is zeroing in. By this stage of the hunt, all the random puzzle pieces had locked into place. The clock, the ring cam, the porch clues, the GPS data, the psychological profiling, it all painted a terrifying picture. January 30th stopped looking like a random, chaotic string of bad luck. It looks like a highly tactical hit. Nancy gets dropped off around 9:50 p.m. Totally normal night. Hours later, the nightmare starts. The camera dies at 1:47 a.m., motion trips at 2:12, and her pacemaker flatlines at 2:28. Those timestamps are the absolute backbone of this entire mystery. Detectives know that inside that 41-minute window, the entire crime went down. First, the stalking, then killing the security feed to own the scene, and finally, breaking in. Somewhere in that chaos, forensics recovered blood belonging to Nancy Guthrie, proving she did not just pack up and walk away. No packed bags, her wallet was still there, and zero proof of life after that awful night. Even those sketchy ransom texts did not help. In real kidnappings, the demands usually ramp up. But here, just dead silence. Now, a massive forensic breakthrough is taking over DNA. Police confirmed the biological traces from the scene are getting top-tier lab testing, and it is not just one swab. They are pulling multiple samples from more than one person. That flips the script entirely. The The investigation is not just about what happened anymore. It is a hunt for who was actually in the room. DNA takes time, but it shrinks the suspect list with brutal accuracy. The catch? Detectives say the genetic profile does not match anyone currently in the system, nothing in CODIS, and 0 hits in any databases available to cops. If that holds up, we are looking at a phantom, a first-timer with no swabs on file, and a clean enough record to slip under the radar. So cops cannot just scroll through a list of local felons. They are going to have to build this guy's identity from scratch. Still, a solid suspect profile is coming together. Police are hunting for a man of average build, somewhere around 5'9" to 5'10". A guy who stayed icy under pressure. Walked right up to the house without flinching, and clearly planned the attack, even if he botched the ending. The intruder clearly knew the layout, and might have even had some personal connection to Nancy herself. But here's the kicker. The suspect acted like a guy who thought he was totally untraceable. That kind of arrogance always breeds sloppy mistakes. Whoever pulled this off probably never thought the security footage could be saved. He likely didn't count on DNA evidence either. He clearly underestimated the digital footprint left behind, assuming those deleted files were gone forever. In major true crime investigations, it's exactly those blind spots, not some flashy clue, that silently blow the whole case wide open. The motive is still a massive question mark. Why target Nancy Guthrie? Detectives don't think this was random. But remember, a targeted hit doesn't automatically mean it's personal. It could be a direct connection. Someone who tracked her daily habits, knew when she was isolated, and navigated her home with total confidence. Or it was a stalker scenario. A stranger scoping out the property for weeks, logging every vehicle, and memorizing her schedule without ever meeting her. The dates police are zeroing in on January 11th and January 24th make this theory highly credible. A third angle is pure greed, backed by those ransom letters and cryptocurrency demands that popped up later. Yet experts are seriously doubting that angle. The cash was never picked up, and the kidnapper never pushed for payment again, which makes a lot of people think the whole ransom plot was just a smokescreen, a clever decoy to hide the actual motive. Right now, the police have 0 named suspects, 0 arrests, no solid motive, and absolutely no clue where Nancy is. But don't think the investigation is frozen. Actually, it's quite the opposite. DNA analysis is still running. Digital evidence is getting a fresh look. The missing person timeline is getting tightened up minute by minute. Honestly, it's these silent breakthroughs that usually crack cases. Massive breakthroughs in true crime rarely drop like a bomb on day one. Usually, they start in crime labs or databases. Just tiny puzzle pieces that suddenly snap into perfect place. Nancy Guthrie didn't just evaporate into thin air. We have blood spatter, a strict digital timeline, cell tower pings, and security video that survived long after the suspect thought he wiped it clean. And the culprit dropped way more breadcrumbs than they ever planned to. We're talking patterns, sloppy errors, and raw DNA that could finally pin this on one specific guy. The file isn't cold, it's just unfinished. But for right now, Nancy is gone. She was 84 years old when she vanished into the dark, leaving behind the vital medication and daily care she desperately relied on. Her loved ones are still waiting, still hunting, still begging for closure. There's a $1 million bounty for solid tips. And while detectives grind away at the evidence, one core truth keeps this whole thing grounded. Mysteries like this don't get cracked by sheer luck. They get solved when someone finally talks, one tiny detail clicks, and the whole board flips.